It is 5:30, so we'll call the meeting to order. Will you please stand so we can say the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At least as far as I know, there's no additional items for the agenda. So we'll start off this evening with the adoption of the consent agenda. Gentlemen, we good?
I make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item are public hearings. There's a public hearing on item 4A to consider condemnation of the structure at 424 South 18th Street as dangerous and unsafe. I will open the hearing.
Yes,
Okay,
we've received some complaints about that. Went out and looked at the structure, and obviously needs some work on it. So so our staff recommendation that we move forward with condemnation on this property. I have talked to the owner by phone, and they do have plans to work on it and to get it fixed. I don't know if they're here tonight, but I've talked with them by phone, and that's their plan. Explain the process a little bit, that it'll take 9 to 12 months, and we'll work with them to get that done. They seem to be agreeable to do that.
Okay, questions? Leonard?
As you did go through the detail, and
Yeah,
okay,
sure did. So they thought that was something that they could do within that time frame.
Do they live in Independence?
Wichita.
Do you know when the property was last occupied?
It's been several months.
Several months?
Maybe 4 or 5 months. They had somebody in there that was, I think, trying to work on it, they said, but I'm not quite sure the reason that they weren't in there at the present time, but they're not in there now.
All right, thank
You'll
you.
be able to obtain a timeline
Sure.
and
Yeah, I mean, they seem willing to do that, so I think that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
So.
okay. Other comments then? Anybody?
the owner's not here or representative.
You said the owner's not here.
Asked to see if they're here. I've only talked to them on phone, so I don't know what they look like. But
Okay. All right. Close the hearing then. Entertain a motion then to condemn 424 South 18th Street as dangerous and unsafe. Would there be a motion?
I move to condemn the property located at 424 South 18th Street as dangerous and unsafe and provide 30 days to commence repair or removal.
I'd second that motion. All those in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item 5 is for items for consent or for the commission action. Item A is to consider setting the date of January 25th, 2017 at 5:30 p.m. for public hearings to consider condemnation of the following properties as dangerous and unsafe. First one is 606 Fountain Street. We'll call that open that hearing.
so we've received some complaints on that. Obviously it's rough. It would be staff's recommendation that we move forward to set a date for possible condemnation on this property as you discussed earlier.
Just to set the hearing date.
Just to,
Just to set the hearing date, yes, I'm sorry. I knew I would
Is the owner here?
get the verbiage wrong.
Is the owner here by any chance? Okay.
Has any work been going on now, or has it just been in this condition?
It's been in this condition for a while. So some of the neighbors have complained and just says it's continually getting worse.
Okay. Other comments in? Okay, I'll close the hearing. I would move that we set the date of January 25th, 2017 for a public hearing to consider condemnation of 606 Fountain Street. Would there be a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussions? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next address is 812 South Fifth Street. I would open the hearing for 812 South. What's that?
It's not here. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
that date.
Oh, we're just that date. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, it sounded good. Good. Go for it.
I'm not sure if the owners are here tonight. They were here last time. Speaking with them, this is one that we've also received complaints on, roofs falling in several places. The owners have told me that they plan on taking this out. So you see, I mean, it's not the worst one that I've seen, but we have, especially on the south side, we have a portion of the roof that's falling into the house, and it's exposed in several places on the south side. So it is staff's recommendation that we move forward to set a hearing as discussed earlier.
Okay. Questions, Lynn?
So have they given you any idea of a timeline to
Not
remove
yet.
it?
Not a hard timeline, no.
Okay, because they should know that if they remove it, then the asbestos removal's a little more lenient than
Yes.
if we do. Their cost
Yes.
is going to increase.
Yes, and we have discussed that a little bit. We will discuss that in more detail on that
Yeah.
in the next 2 months.
Okay. All right, then. Entertain a motion then that we condemn or set the public hearing.
I move to.
Go ahead, Gary.
I move to set the date of January 25th, 2017 for public hearing to consider condemnation of 812 South Fifth Street as dangerous and unsafe.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
1320 West Locust Street.
Yes, this is one, when it's in full summer, you might not even know that there's a structure there. There is portions of the house still left of the structure there, but it's in very, very rough shape. So I don't know if the owners are here tonight.
Have you had contact with them?
I have spoken to them.
Do they have plans? Or
Well, they would
still
like to
looking
take
save
it down. They are trying to consider, what their plans would be for structures on there after it was
Okay.
taken down. But
So they're not planning to restore it, but planning to. do
not
away
what
with it.
not what was discussed with me. No.
Okay.
It'd take a lot of money to restore.
Yes, indeed.
So it's staff's recommendation that we move forward to set the hearing as was discussed earlier.
Leonard, do you have a question?
No questions, but
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we set the hearing date for consideration of condemnation of 1,320 West Locust
For January 25th.
for January 25th.
2000.
I'll second.
All right. Although, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item B is consider a recommendation from the plan. Thank you, Don. Consider a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve a conditional use permit for a pre-primary preschool in an O&P district at 1201 North 10th Street and 515 West Oak.
This is a request that we received from the USD as they would like to have a preschool in the old Riley School building. And it went to the Planning Commission, and it was recommended unanimously to approve this. And so it is now at the commission level for you to approve that. If you determine to do that, then there is a rezoning ordinance, which we have one prepared here a conditional use permit resolution to make that effective. And I have copies of that for you.
Unanimously approved by the Planning Zoning Commission.
Yes, it was 6-0. We had some people that were out of town that night, so we only had 6 there, but it was 6-0.
Okay. Questions? Gary?
Nope.
All right.
No, I'd make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit for a preschool at 1201 North 10th Street and 515 West Oak Street.
Second?
Been moved and seconded, and without further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. And then I'd also make a motion that we authorize the mayor to sign a resolution authorizing the conditional use permit to operate a pre-preliminary school at 1201 North 10th Street and 515 West Oak Street.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. All right, item C is consider a recommendation from the Planning Commission to rezone attractive land from R4, medium-density, multifamily dwelling district to O&P, office and professional district located at 2207 North 10th Street.
This is a request from Tri-County, who would like to utilize this existing building for offices. It's currently zoned R4 multifamily, which means that someone could come in and build R4 apartment complex without going through rezoning because it's already zoned that way. This would be a lesser density use than what it could go in that zone based on what is allowed. At the hearing, the Planning Commission recommended 6-0 approval. There were some residents there. They were mainly worried about something going in on the other side of that that's vacant. You see the big, large area. That's actually kind of a low area and has some water retainage issues that happen there. And the people at Tri-County said they, had no desire to build anything else there. That was the main concern we heard from the neighbors. Other than that, there really wasn't anything negative. The traffic's really not going to be impacted much more than what it was before, maybe different hours, but probably not much more in traffic. She did state that in the summer when they don't use their vans, they will park them there, but it's just to store them there on the lot. So we have prepared a zoning ordinance to make this rezoning change, and here's a copy of that.
Thank you, Ken.
So in the notes, it said something about is there an easement for drainage?
Yes, can you kind of see that dark line that runs behind it? There's a 10-foot drainage easement, and you couldn't build over that anyway. So if they did build something, it wouldn't, they couldn't really build onto the building very well because they'd be encroaching pretty close to that. And from what they've told us, the rest of that lot kind of holds a lot of water. So, but they said they had no intentions of building anything there. But yeah, there is on the plat. There's a 10-foot drainage easement.
Okay.
And then if they did, though, they're still going to have to comply with drainage retention and anything to maintain runoff.
Yeah, it's part of their building permit process.
Right, okay. Because things change just as long as we get it covered in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Gary, you have any questions?
I don't.
I know, Julie, have you got any comments, Julie?
Not unless there are questions.
Okay. Then we have Lisa Richard wanted to address this. So, yeah, you know the drill.
All right. Hi, my name is Lisa Richard, and I wanted to talk to you about this item and a little bit about comprehensive plans and what they are and how I believe this action is inconsistent with the application of a comprehensive plan. I believe that this is more in the nature of a spot zoning type of action, and that irregardless of what you do tonight, that if you keep doing this type of action, that you will have a patchwork of irregular patches of zoning all over the city, because it's tough when really nice people come forward and there are really good reasons to do something, and not a lot of detrimental reasons, and you don't have a number of neighbors screaming against it. Everybody's for it, and you just say to yourselves, well, why not? So if you look at your comprehensive plan and the map that you have there with the colors, it's all really pretty consistent with the greens and the yellows and the blues and the reds. And this is a residential zone R4. So if you comprehensive plans are intended to guide development and provide a general overall sense. I don't know how long it's been since the city has revised its comprehensive plan, but if you are getting to the point where you're saying, we don't want R4 development here because it would be detrimental, then maybe it's time to go and revise your plan, either revise the definition of what R4 is, because you're allowing a type of development that is too severe in a direction. It's going to have impacts in residential neighborhoods that you don't want. So you want to tone it down a bit. You don't want the multifamily development of a certain size. Or revise the plan and maybe zone certain arterial, maybe 10th Street past around the high school has really become an arterial street to a degree that you want to look at a different kind of zoning idea there. But you want to do things consciously, not bit by bit. You want to plan these ahead. That's what comprehensive plans are. So in my opinion, this is a spot zoning tonight. And that's just, my humble opinion. If I'd been on the Planning Commission, I would have voted against it. I wasn't. And I urge you to vote against it, even though really nice people are involved.
I appreciate your humble opinion very
Thank
much,
you.
as always.
Thank you.
But, when you have a building sitting empty, I'd rather have somebody use it for something like this,
Absolutely.
I think, than let it sit empty.
Right.
So-
And that's another comment about, if I could respond to that.
Please.
I'd love to. In my opinion, you need to look at the property itself and the plan, not the building and the temporary use of the property.
Right.
These fine folks might decide not to buy the property, or they may decide to use it for something else after the property is rezoned. They might decide, we want to put in a more intensive commercial development there.
Right.
And what's to stop them from doing that? Nothing.
Understood.
It's been
Understood.
rezoned. They can
Right.
use that commercial property to its fullest commercial use now that you've rezoned it. So the intent of what you've done here may not be carried out to the extent that you think. So keep these things in mind in the future, and that's all I have to say on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I remind you, it's not being rezoned commercial, but to office and professional, which is different.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Kelly and I visited yesterday because you get church structures that are scattered through town that have a definite use when they're built, but things happen, and just like in this case, the building no longer has a need as a church, so what do you do with the building?
Right.
And I understand what Lisa is saying. When we look at our comprehensive plan, it was originally developed in, the 80s?
I'd say it's been 30 or more years, because we
19.
looked at that.
1982.
Yeah, so, since 1982, the town has changed. And we've got situations coming up that in this case, we don't want to get into the habit of spot zoning, but we need to be aware that there is an issue both with the use of the building and with zoning principles. In 1982, there's been a significant change of direction that I think is Commission and the Planning Commission. Maybe it's time we do consider looking at a modification or an update of the comprehensive plan, and one that maybe we could take into consideration looking at some of these buildings with the option of how it will be used in the future in case it closes, so we can have some consistency in the growth and the development. For this case is 10th Street, good circulation, 4-lane. It's not going to be an issue, but some locations it could have a significant impact, and we don't want to start spot zoning all through town when a church closes to become OMP, or now we've got a single-family neighborhood that somebody wants to take a church and make multifamily. So we don't want to lose a building, so do we zone that property R4 in an R2 or R3? Maybe, some of the points that Lisa made is something we should put some direction for the Planning Commission and consideration of revising our comprehensive plan.
And an OMP is a much less intensive use than a commercial zoning. And actually, compared to an R4, it could be a lower intensity use also. And let me read you the definition. A district OMP is intended to provide areas for public, semi-public, institutional, professional, and office types of uses. Land space and aesthetic requirements of these uses make desirable either a central location or a suburban location near residential neighborhoods. Residential development is permitted in this district. So it could even be used, somebody, could even go back and use it as residential because that is permitted in an OP district. So it's a little bit different than the commercial districts. And also the general development plan map, which you see on the screen, and I think you guys can see it a little bit down there. The yellow it's residential, but it doesn't distinguish between R1, R2, R3, R4, or 5, or any of that. It just says, the general plan at that time was for this area to generally be residential. And we have had OMP not too far in this neighborhood. I don't know if you had a chance to read the rezoning report that I put together, but the 4 county offices is not too far away. That was originally like an R4 and was rezoned to OMP just like this. Actually, that rezoning case, there was a lot of people that came out that, were not too excited about that. But
That was the
I
one
can
on
say,
Grand, is that the one on Grand Street?
yes, and I can say after the fact, though, we really haven't heard too many complaints. In fact, I don't remember any complaints of any issues occurring, but I know it was a concern when it happened. So sometimes the perception of what's going to happen too can change, but anyway, really the residents were mainly just concerned on how that was developed, and I think they liked having that open yard behind them and that kind of thing. But
Yeah, they don't want.
they weren't concerned about the office particularly. They just kind of liked that vacant land being open, which, like you said, they could potentially develop it if they wanted to, if they followed the requirements, but she indicated that they didn't have any plans to do that.
Do we ever do condemnations of old church buildings?
If they were in a state to be condemned, if they were a blight and met the requirements, they certainly could be condemned, any structure.
Was there a special or a spot zone or whatever the term would be when this church was built? Did this have
No,
to?
what it required is churches in a residential district. In the R4 required a conditional use permit. And so it was granted a conditional use permit to construct a church. And in fact, I pulled that out to review it to see if there was any special requirements, but it mainly had to deal with drainage and different things on building the property. So yeah, that was granted in, in 2000 is when the conditional use permit was granted to build the church there as a conditional use.
Was conditional use issued just for that church, or did it stay with the building?
Well, the conditional use permit was issued so that they could construct the church.
Right.
because they got the conditional use permit before they built the church. And the conditions relate to the drainage plan and how the building was going to be located and not having light shining in the residential areas, typical things we do in conditional use permits. And saying the building materials had to be wood frame with a partial brick veneer. That was probably to stay in that residential character of that neighborhood is probably why they do that. Sometimes they will do that so that something doesn't just stick out in a neighborhood, so that will blend in.
And some conditional use permits are issued for that one particular business. Like if I get a conditional use permit for a daycare at my property and I move, that conditional use permit disappears
Yes.
at that house. And if I change, then I have to establish another one. So I wasn't for sure if, with the church, if it stays with that organization or that operation of the church, or if it would, like, for another church to buy it, they would have to go through the conditional use permit.
I think if they bought it, I don't see why they would have to go through it as long as it was a continual thing. It'd be like if you had a daycare and then you sold your daycare, but you had your conditional use permit. I mean, they've already got that. So I mean, it goes with. I would think it goes with the land, but we have an attorney here. Maybe he can advise on that.
I was just wondering, because it's changing now, if the conditional use permit, like something had to be done anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you
because,
couldn't take it. Like I've had people
Right.
that's had a conditional use permit at one house, and then they move to another house. They say, "Well, I already got that." So, well, it's a different neighborhood, and you have to notify the property owners within 200 feet, and all of that. So it doesn't go to a different location, but as long as it was at that location and that use was being done. I mean, if they sold the building and that it was still for the use that the conditional use was for. I mean, on this conditional use that was permitted. It doesn't say anywhere, it does say that who the applicant was, but I don't see where it says that it,
If it was sold to another church, it would continue.
now, I think you
Which
could
makes
put a
sense.
condition on there if you wanted to. You can add the additional conditions, and if you wanted
Yeah,
somebody
and
to have to
that's
come back through,
from the
you
planning.
probably could make them do that.
That's
And
from
actually,
the planning commission to
the commission
determine.
can add additional conditions after the planning commission's reviewed it. We've had that happen before.
Okay.
So, yeah, you do have some latitude depending on what conditions are put on it, if you want to put more strict
And
conditions.
it depends on the planning commission's decision at that time. So with the rezoning, any future use for office would allow sale or transition. Okay.
Okay. All right. Further comments, further questions? Okay, we're ready to proceed with a motion to accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Then we'd need a motion to accept or to approve the ordinance.
I'm going to move that we accept the recommendation from the Planning Commission and approve rezoning a tract of land at 2207 North 10th Street from R4, medium-density multifamily dwelling district, to O&P, office and professional district.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Then, without further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then we need to approve the ordinance.
Yeah.
And I'd move in that we approve the ordinance for the rezoning of the tract of land from R4 medium density multifamily dwelling district to OMP office and professional district as herein set forth, amending the official zoning map in accordance, incorporated by reference by section 303.0. Would there be a second?
I'll s-
Go
Go ahead.
ahead. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded then to approve the ordinance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item, Don. These are to consider rescinding, which is good. Rescinding
Rescind is good.
condemnation actions for the properties located at 508 South 10th.
Yes, a lot of work done on this property, so we're satisfied that it's met the HQS and recommend that that the commission go forward to rescind the condemnation for 508 South 10th Street.
This was Yes, originally.
I think this was a flood property.
Condemned after the flood in 2008.
Okay. Well, it looks good. Looks really nice.
Well, I mean, there's no perfect properties, so a lot of work done on these,
Yeah.
on these properties, so.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Larry?
No.
Okay. Entertain a motion then to rescind the condemnation for 508 South 10th. I'd make that motion, that we rescind the condemnation for 508 South 10th.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next property is 605 North 16th.
Yeah, a lot of work done on this property. Worked very, very hard on this property. So staff's recommendation that we rescind condemnation at 605 North 16th Street.
Well, it looks good. It looks really nice. Okay. Questions, comments? All right,
No.
entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion that we rescind the condemnation for 605 North 16th.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next property is 914 North 6th.
Yes, I'm proud to recommend on behalf of the staff that we rescind condemnation at 914 North 6th Street.
Again, a lot of work.
Wow.
A lot of work.
Lot of
Change
work.
on that one.
A lot of work on these properties.
Comments?
No.
This is a nice one, too.
Yes.
I'd make a motion then that we rescind the condemnation for 914 North 6th. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And then last is 1201 West Laurel Street.
Yes. So it's staff's recommendation that we rescind condemnation on
unbelievable.
1201 West Laurel Street. I can say there's no perfect properties. There's still a few issues here and there, but we certainly have met the essence of the HQS, and we recommend that, it's our recommendation that 1201 West Laurel Street, the condemnation be rescinded.
Questions or comments? Entertain a motion then.
I'll move that we rescind condemnation action for the property located at 1201 West Laurel Street.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And now we're ready for item E, which is consider authorizing the mayor to sign a lease purchase agreement with IEP for acquisition of property for economic development purposes. Greg?
As you recall, the city approached the IAP, the Independence Action Partnership, about 12 years ago, I guess it was, to purchase this property for use for industrial purposes. The city at the time couldn't afford it, so they asked them to buy it. The city never came back and actually purchased it, so IAP has owned it since then. They have now approached the city wishing to sell it, and we are obviously very interested, as we were 12 years ago, because it's adjacent to our West Laurel Industrial Park, and a large tract of land like that is critical in attracting any future development. Often, if we've talked with the MCAC, and they always talk about you need like 40 acres, or companies won't even look at you. So we feel it's incumbent that we purchase that property back on a lease purchase agreement for the amount that IAP originally paid for it 12 years ago, $250,000, which we would do over a 5-year period, a lease purchase, $50,000 a year.
Okay. Questions? Was this the property that when the pipeline company came through, is this the same this is the same property? right?
Yes, they lease this property in a small portion of the cities.
Questions or comments?
I've had a couple people call with questions once they saw the agenda about the property, and there was a misunderstanding from appearance. They thought maybe the city owned the property and sold it to IAP, and I explained to them that it was never purchased or owned by the city prior to IAP, and what we were wanting to do, like Craig mentioned, is use it for expansion of our industrial park and providing access on Peter Pan Road and giving more potential for businesses with the industrial park's limited space available now. It really is an asset
Yeah.
that we need to move on.
Might be nice to even have a road or two through there somewhere at some time to enhance access to it. Gary, you have any? Okay, we do have a comment from, or request a comment on it from Lisa Richard. You.
Hi, Lisa Richard again. I guess city manager's statement explains quite a bit and answers several of my questions. He did mention that $250,000 was the amount that was originally paid. So this was the amount that the Independence Action Partnership paid for the property originally, and this would be the amount that the city would be paying for the property. I guess I would just want, in the interest of the public, in spite of the fact that was the case, I think it would still be good to confirm that that is a fair market price, that that it is in fact worth that amount. If it is worth considerably less than that, then I guess we would want to look at that and say, why are we purchasing that for significantly more than it's actually worth? It would seem to be a favor to the person who purchased it. Maybe there would be some sense of owing, that it was purchased on a request of a former city administrator, that perhaps something is owed to this individual or this nonprofit. It's Mr. Kelly, I believe, who owns the nonprofit Independence Action Partnership, or who's the president of it.
That's not owned individually, is it?
He's the president. I looked it up on the corporation's website. I wasn't able to see their.
Oh, he's an
or-
officer then.
He's
Yeah,
the
an
president of the, and he's also a board member of the Montgomery MCAC. Isn't that correct? Which is the organization that is asking you to, or is urging you to buy this property. Isn't that correct?
Well, Montgomery County Action Council was just providing information about industry that's looking to come to the area. They weren't recommending, they were just providing us with information regarding what businesses or industry are looking for as far as lot size and access.
Maybe I misunderstood the write-up a little bit. I thought I read in there that Montgomery County Action Commission was stating that it was imperative that we purchase this property.
Well, they support it, and I mean, we were in discussions before we even talked to MCAC about this, but they certainly support this and urge that, yeah, you're right, in that they would support that because we do need those large tracts of land to develop, and that's why they support it. But they didn't come to us and say, oh, go out and buy it.
Okay. Well, who owned the property before? Who did the nonprofit?
Before.
Master and farmer.
Well, Master, the local farmer owned it before that.
Okay. Well, I do feel that it would be imperative to look at the fair market value of the property and to determine whether it is in the best interest of the public to purchase this property if it is actually not at fair market value, whether a below fair market purchase is in the best interest of the public to make at this time. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the confusion when you look on the county appraiser's website, it lists it as farmland, And when it was originally purchased, the owner realized that it wasn't farmland, it was industrial park. And that's where the cost difference came from, is the industrial park is landlocked. And for us to have sites to handle, to be more attractive to larger industry, the 40-acre tract was necessary. So in that case, the price was set by the use and availability that it was able to demand a higher price than agricultural land. And, I had talked to another member of IAP before it came presented to the commission, and they had confirmed the same scenario and purchase price. But that's the difficulty when you have a specific need in a location that you're not privileged to do some strict negotiations on the land.
I think it's critical that we have the property for future development. And, so, all right, Gary. All right, I entertain a motion then that we authorize, I'm the mayor. Somebody else make the motion to authorize signing the lease.
I make a motion that we authorize the mayor to sign the lease purchase agreement with IAP for acquisition of the property for economic development purposes, an amount of $250,000 with payment as stipulated in the agreement.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Without further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Reports. Second quarter treasurer's report. Correct.
It's under reports. Again, we're catching up with our required quarterly treasury report, and we're working to soon have the third quarter report to you as well. So this will be published as our second quarter report, and can't give you a timeline on the third quarter, but we'll get there shortly. I don't know if you want to add anything, Mike, but
We're working
there it
on
is.
starting on the third quarter, getting moving on it. It's going to take us a little bit longer. We're a little further ahead with the first quarter and the second quarter, but we'll get moving forward with it and get it done as soon as possible.
Are you getting it worked out with the KDHE?
I haven't met with Sean yet. I was tied up getting this finalized last week to make sure
Okay.
we got it in the packet. With the schedule being a short week this week, we couldn't get together, so we're going to work on something next week to get in and discuss those different draws.
Okay.
So the differences between this report or this quarterly statement versus the other quarterly statement is timing for when different
Right.
revenues are posted and.
That's right. So
Revenues.
your beginning balance would be the ending balance of the first quarter. Then you have your receipts and your disbursements that have occurred during that second quarter, giving you that ending balance.
All right. Other questions? Okay. Then in our packet, there were city board minutes from the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. Don't believe we, nope, commission comments. Gary, you got anything this evening? Linda, any comments this evening?
No, I didn't have any comments.
Okay. Don't have any other public concerns. We don't have
No executive session.
no executive sessions.
Did you want a further report on the update on 223? There was on the agenda there. It's just an update on under reports, item B. Oh no, that's
That's city
Did
board
you have
meeting.
an old
You
one?
haven't. You must. I was going to say I didn't see. Yeah, I don't see.
John likes that too.
Yeah, we took that off, 'cause
We
we didn't have
anticipated
enough, we didn't have
having a
enough
report, but
days, so we
didn't
took
have
it
any
off. Yeah.
Information to report.
We're good. All right, with that then, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So seconded.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We'll sign our peace second.
Gary and Leonard.
Yeah.
I heard the winter.